Hello and welcome back. Pull the blanket up a bit, get comfortable, sort the pillow situation out before we start, and if you've got a tea or anything nearby, now's probably a good time for a sip. We're going to be here for a while tonight. We're going somewhere a bit silly. We're going to a small, fictional mountain town in Colorado that's been on television for nearly 30 years. A town where a portal to hell opened in a third grader's closet once and nobody really commented on it. Where the laws of physics work whenever the writers feel like it and don't when they don't. Where 4 boys have been in the 4th grade for so long that the actors voicing them have quietly aged into their 50s around them. We're talking about South Park, and specifically, we're talking about the one boy at that bus stop with the red mittens and the yellow gloves, and the impossibly round little jacket. The one who somehow ended up as one of the most recognizable cartoon characters in television history, despite being, on paper, the worst person any of us have ever met. Eric Cartman. Now, before we properly get into all of this, take a moment to actually settle in. Have a stretch if you need to. Get the head positioned right on the pillow. If you've still got your phone in your hand, set it down somewhere you won't fuss with it. This is going to be a long one, and there's absolutely no rush about any of it. If you happen to drift off somewhere in the middle, that's genuinely fine. You can come back to the rest whenever. The boys at the bus stop aren't going anywhere, and Cartman in particular has shown a remarkable ability to keep existing no matter what gets thrown at him, so we don't need to worry about him on that front. Here's the thing about Cartman, and the reason I wanted to spend an entire video on him. Most people, when they talk about South Park, talk about him in a slightly dismissive way. He's the racist one. He's the loud one. He's the catchphrase one. He says, "Respect my authority," and people quote it back to him in shops, and that's mostly the end of it. And that's fair, on one level. He is all of those things. He is, without any real argument, the worst behaved character in the show. And the show has a whole town's worth of badly behaved characters. He's done things that written out on paper would be unprintable in most newspapers. He's tried to start a race war. He's framed his classmates for things he himself was doing. He's blackmailed people he probably shouldn't have been able to find the leverage on. He has, on at least one well-documented occasion, locked his best friend in a refrigerator at a gas station because he wanted to go to a Mexican-themed restaurant in Denver more than he wanted that friend to live. And the show treats most of this as a Wednesday. But here's the bit I find genuinely interesting and the bit I think gets missed. If you actually look at how Cartman is built as a character, the scheming, the planning, the elaborate disguises, the multi-episode arcs that pay off years later, the way he can pivot from victim to dictator in a single line of dialogue, there's a real craft to him. Trey Parker has been quietly making one of the most carefully constructed characters in animation, week after week, for the entire run of the show. And a lot of people watching don't notice because the surface of the character is so loud. The yelling and the swearing and the various offensive things he says drown out the fact that underneath it, somebody has been writing a kind of small-town criminal mastermind in a child's body. And doing it more consistently than most prestige dramas manage with their actual leads. So tonight, that's what we're doing. We're going to wander through Cartman, his schemes, his disguises, the strange, long mystery of who his father actually is, which the show set up in the very first season and didn't bother answering for about 13 years. The time he became a superhero called the Coon, the time he became a robot called the Awesome O4000, the time he became a girl named Margarine and infiltrated a slumber party for reasons that, in fairness, did seem to make sense to him at the time. The strangely sad season-long arc where he had an actual girlfriend and slowly turned her into a smaller version of himself. The voice behind him, the production schedule that produces him, and the quiet question of why a character this awful has lasted this long when entire other shows have come and gone in the time he's been at that bus stop. It'll meander a bit. That's sort of the plan. I'm not trying to build to a big point or sell you anything at the end. We're just going to spend a couple of hours talking about a small, terrible cartoon boy from Colorado. And if you fall asleep somewhere around the halfway mark, that's a successful evening on both of our parts. One small thing before we properly begin. I'm going to do my best not to make this feel like an expose. Cartman's worst moments are genuinely dark, and we'll get to some of them, but we're going to talk about them with the same tone we'd use to talk about anything else in the show. The point isn't to recoil from him. The point is to look at him properly, the way you might look at any well-built fictional villain in any well-built fictional world. He's not a real person, he's a series of decisions made by writers and animators over a very long period of time. And those decisions are what we're actually talking about tonight. There's something worth saying about the world he sits inside too before we go anywhere. South Park as a place has a very specific texture. It's almost always winter. The mountains in the background are always the same blue-gray. The snow on the ground never quite melts. The bus stop where the four boys stand has its own permanent visual rhythm. The same fence, the same pole with the same wonky little stop sign, the same way the wind blows the same flakes of snow across the same patch of road. Some of that is animation efficiency. The show was originally made by cutting out pieces of construction paper and moving them around, and even now, decades later after they switched to computers, the visual aesthetic still has that handmade, slightly jittery quality on purpose. They want it to look like four people put it together in a week, because they did. And into that quiet, slightly washed out, slightly cold-looking little town walks Eric Cartman, round, loud, wrapped in turquoise and red, already complaining about something, already plotting something else. The town is the backdrop, and he's almost always the part of the frame that's moving. I think that's part of why he stuck. Most cartoon characters get less interesting the longer a show runs. Cartman has somehow gone the other way. The longer he's been around, the more layers the writers have quietly added underneath him, until you've got this strange little 9-year-old with a documented history of war crimes, a complicated relationship with his mother, an unresolved father question, a brief and disastrous serious relationship, a superhero alter ego, multiple business ventures, a personal vendetta against half the people in town, and a documented soft spot for stuffed animals and a Mexican restaurant in Denver. The list shouldn't add up to a coherent character, but it does, and we're going to spend tonight figuring out gently why. Right, the blanket, the pillow, the lights, whatever you've still got left to sort. I'll wait. Settled. Good. Let's start. So let's actually have a proper look at him before we get into any of the schemes. If you've never watched South Park, or you've only seen bits of it on the internet, the easiest way to picture Cartman is to imagine a child-sized snowman that's been very angrily dressed in a turquoise jacket. He's round. Specifically, he's the roundest of the four boys, which the show has never been subtle about. His head is a near-perfect circle. His body is a slightly larger near-perfect circle stacked underneath it. The jacket is turquoise, the shirt underneath is yellow, the trousers are dark, and there's a red knit hat with a yellow palm on top of his head, paired with a red scarf or red mittens depending on the scene. He almost never takes the hat off. When he does, his hair is brown and flat, the kind of haircut a mother gives a child she's too tired to argue with. That roundness is doing real work, by the way. The reason all four boys are roughly cylinder-shaped is that the show was originally animated with cut-out construction paper. You can't really do dynamic poses with construction paper, so the characters are built to be moved around the frame like little figurines on a desk, sliding rather than running. Even after the show switched over to computer animation in the very early seasons, they kept the same aesthetic on purpose because the look had become the brand. Cartman's roundness means animators can fold him into almost any pose, slap him on the ground, bounce him off a wall, sit him down, stand him up, and the silhouette still reads as him. It's an oddly efficient bit of character design that's gone unnoticed by most of the audience for the entire run of the show. Now, the voice. The voice is the other thing that makes him him. Trey Parker voices Cartman. Trey Parker also voices Stan and Mr. Garrison and Randy Marsh and Mr. Mackey and Jimmy and Timmy and most of the men of South Park. Matt Stone handles Kyle and Kenny and Butters and another long list of people. The two of them between them voice almost everyone you've ever heard speak on the show. And Cartman's voice is Trey doing a slightly nasal, slightly whiny, slightly higher-pitched version of his own voice, and then the audio is pitched up a bit further in post-production to give it that childlike, just this side of grading quality. The result is a voice that sounds genuinely like a small dictator trapped inside a 9-year-old's body, which is, of course, what he is. There's a phrase that comes out of that voice more than any other: respect my authority. It's said in this strange Southern sheriff cadence, with the final word stretched out into about 4 syllables, and it has, for better or worse, become the most quoted line in the show's history. Cartman says it whenever he's pretending to be a hall monitor, a police officer, a security guard, a teacher, a real estate agent, or basically anything that gives him the imagined right to tell other people what to do. The line is technically just a joke, but it's also a very honest summary of who he is, because the thing Cartman wants more than anything else in any given moment is not really money or power in the abstract. It's the experience of other people having to listen to him, the authority itself, the respect of it. He's not a megalomaniac. He's a tiny, petulant little manager who wants to wear the high-vis jacket and hold the clipboard. I'll come back to that idea throughout the night because it explains a lot of the things he does later, but for now, you only need to know it once. He wants to be in charge. He doesn't quite know what he'd do with being in charge, but he wants it. Where Cartman sits in the friend group is also worth a quick word because it's not what people sometimes assume. The four boys, Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Cartman, aren't really a unit of equals. Stan and Kyle are best friends, full stop. They sit next to each other on the bus, they share secrets, they spend the most time at each other's houses, and the show treats them as the emotional core of any episode that's actually about friendship. Kenny is Kenny, which is to say he's the third friend, the one who's almost always there but doesn't speak as much because for most of the show's history, his voice has been muffled by the parka hood pulled tight over his face. He gets his own moments, but he tends to operate in his own quieter orbit. And then there's Cartman, who is the friend nobody actually likes, but nobody can quite get rid of either. Kyle hates him openly. The two of them have been at each other's throats since the first episode and have spent decades trading insults, traps, schemes, and the occasional actual physical fight. Stan tolerates him with the resigned exhaustion of someone who knows he can't change the situation. Kenny seems to find him funny, though it's hard to tell given the muffled hood. None of them would call him a best friend, but none of them ever quite walk away from him either. He's part of the group the same way an unfortunate weather pattern is part of a region. He's just there. He just keeps being there. His home life makes a lot of his behavior make sense, even if it doesn't excuse it. Cartman lives with his mother, Leanne, in a small house in town. Leanne is one of the gentlest people in the show. She's softly spoken, almost always smiling, and she loves her son completely. She also has, by every measure, the worst parenting style in the entire town, which is saying something in a town that includes Stuart McCormick and Sheila Broflovsky. Her parenting strategy is essentially to say yes to everything Cartman asks for, no matter how unreasonable, and then to cry about it gently in the kitchen later when nobody's looking. She gives him sugary cereal for breakfast. She lets him watch whatever he wants on television. She lets him stay up. She brings him snacks in his room at any hour. And on the rare occasions she tries to say no, Cartman screams at her until she gives in, which she always does because she can't stand the sound of him being upset. The result is a 9-year-old who has, from his perspective, never not gotten what he wanted, and who reacts to the rest of the world like the rest of the world is a malfunctioning version of his mother. The question of who his father is has been a running thread in the show since the first season, and we've got a whole bit coming up later on that, so I'll leave it alone for now except to say it stays unresolved for a very long time, and the answer is one of the more genuinely strange retroactive twists in television. There's also a cat, Mr. Kitty. The cat is a big gray thing that lives in Cartman's house and gets shouted at constantly. Cartman talks to Mr. Kitty the way some people talk to a passive-aggressive housemate. "No, Kitty, that's my pot pie." "No, Kitty, this is my pot pie." It's a small recurring bit that's somehow lasted decades. Mr. Kitty just sits there, indifferent, waiting for the bit to be over. The cat is one of the few beings in the show that seems immune to Cartman's behavior, possibly because cats are largely immune to everything. Upstairs, in his bedroom, you'll find one of the strangest details about him if you're paying attention. Cartman has a collection of stuffed animals on his bed that he genuinely loves. There's a green frog called Clyde Frog, a pink doll with a flower called Polly Prissy Pants, a panda named Peter Panda, a small thing called Rumper Tumskin. He's had them since he was very young, and he's a lot more attached to them than a kid his age should plausibly be. There are episodes where he holds entire conversations with them. There's one where he discovers Kyle has destroyed Polly Prissy Pants and reacts with a level of genuine grief he never really shows for any human being. The contrast is striking, and I think it's one of the small humanizing details Trey Parker keeps quietly threading into the character. Cartman is awful. Cartman is also, at the end of the day, a small, lonely child who sleeps in a bed surrounded by stuffed animals he's known longer than most of his friends. Those two things sit next to each other, and the show never quite makes you choose between them. One more thing about his origins before we move on, and this is more of a fun detail than anything. Cartman didn't actually start with South Park. He started a couple of years earlier in a short animated film called The Spirit of Christmas, which Trey Parker and Matt Stone made in 1995 for an executive at Fox who wanted a video Christmas card he could send to friends. The short featured 4 boys in a small mountain town getting into a holiday-themed argument that ended with Jesus and Santa Claus having a fistfight in the snow. 3 of the 4 boys looked roughly the way they look now. The 4th, the round one, the loud one, the one already complaining, was Cartman, more or less fully formed, before the show that would eventually contain him existed at all. So when people talk about him as a long-running character, the honest answer is, he's been around even longer than the show. He's been Eric Cartman since before there was even a show to put him in. He just happened to find a town to live in along the way. That's the basic shape of him. Round, loud, voiced by Trey Parker, raised by a mother who can't say no, sleeps with stuffed animals, lives with a cat called Mr. Kitty, has been complaining since 1995. Everything else we're going to talk about tonight is built on top of that, layer by layer. So now that we've laid the groundwork, let's get into the part that actually earns the word brilliance in the title. Picture a chili cook-off, a small one, the kind a town like South Park would actually have. Folding tables, paper bowls, a banner hanging crooked between 2 street lamps, kids running around, parents pretending to enjoy each other's company. It's a perfectly normal autumn afternoon in a perfectly normal mountain town. And in the middle of all of it is a 9-year-old who has been planning this exact afternoon for weeks. He's standing in front of a slow cooker, he's smiling, he's wearing a chef's hat. And the entire town has no idea what's about to happen, because they think they're at a chili cook-off, and they're not. They're at the end of a revenge plot. This is the Scott Tenorman episode, Season 5, Episode 4. It first aired in July 2001, which is a date worth holding on to, because there's a fairly clean before and after to how the show writes Cartman from that point on. Before this episode, he was a loud, bigoted child who said outrageous things and occasionally did something cruel for a laugh. After this episode, he was something else. Trey Parker and Matt Stone have said in interviews that this was the moment they figured out who Cartman actually was. They'd been writing him for 5 seasons, and they hadn't quite landed on the thing that made him fundamentally different from a regular cartoon bully. This episode is where they landed on it, and the answer turned out to be a lot darker than anyone was expecting. The premise starts almost embarrassingly small. Cartman, who is desperate to be the first of his friends to reach puberty, hears that an older kid in town named Scott Tenorman, who's about 3 years older and looks like he listens to bands you've never heard of, has reached puberty and is willing to sell his pubic hair for $10. Cartman scrapes together the money and buys the pubic hair, then proudly shows it to Stan, Kyle, and Kenny. They explain to him with the cheerful brutality of 9-year-olds that buying pubic hair from another kid is not the same as having pubic hair. You don't catch puberty. Cartman has been swindled, so Cartman goes to get his money back, which is where Scott Tenorman starts to enjoy himself, because Scott is, in his own way, a small-scale schemer too. And humiliating a younger child seems to be his idea of a fun afternoon. Scott takes Cartman's additional money. He tricks him into making the long drive to Fort Collins for a pubes fair that doesn't exist. He makes him cluck like a chicken, then like a piggy, in his garage in front of a small audience, on camera, for the promise of getting his money back. And then, when Cartman has thoroughly humiliated himself, Scott lights the money on fire in front of him. $16.12, gone. Cartman screams, swears revenge, and storms off home. And this is where, if this were any other show, the episode would settle into a familiar shape. The protagonist gets bullied. The protagonist tries to get revenge. The revenge fails in a funny way. The protagonist learns something. End of episode. South Park is not that show, especially not where Cartman is concerned. His first revenge attempt is frankly ridiculous. He decides he's going to train a local farmer's pony to bite Scott's penis off. He goes out to a ranch belonging to a man called Mr. Denkins, hangs a hot dog from a scarecrow, and tries to teach a pony to attack it. The pony doesn't bite. The pony does something else to the hot dog, which is one of the more memorable shots in the show's history and which we don't need to describe in any more detail than that. The plan is a complete failure. A couple of local men named Jimbo and Ned, who you might know from other episodes, turn up and try to help, only to get distracted by the fact that Mrs. Tenorman is, for some reason, walking around without her top on. They get caught spying. Cartman is no closer to his revenge. His second plan is more ambitious. He's learned that Scott loves the band Radiohead, so Cartman tries to fake a tape of Radiohead being interviewed, dubbed over with his own voice, in which the band announces that they hate Scott Tenorman specifically and refuse to ever tour again because of him. The plan, when described out loud, sounds like the kind of thing a 9-year-old would absolutely come up with. The plan, when actually executed, sounds exactly that bad. Scott isn't fooled for a second, and worse, Scott shows up at school with the video of Cartman pretending to be a pig in his garage and plays it for the entire town. Cartman becomes a public laughingstock. Kenny laughs so hard he actually dies, which is darkly funny in the show's particular way. So Cartman has now failed twice. He has been humiliated 3 times, he has lost his money, his dignity, and any leverage he might have had. And it's at this exact moment, which is roughly the midpoint of the episode, that something shifts. Cartman stops trying to be funny. Cartman stops trying to scrape together small plans on the fly. Cartman, alone in his room, starts thinking. This is where the episode does its famous bit. Stan and Kyle, who at this point have been watching the whole feud unfold from the sidelines, decide they don't actually want any part of it. Cartman invites Scott to a chili cook-off and tells him there'll be a free pony ride. He tells Stan and Kyle the plan, that he's still going to train the pony to bite Scott's penis off, and that this is going to be the big finish. Stan and Kyle are horrified by how dumb the plan still sounds, so they go and warn Scott. They tell Scott exactly what Cartman is planning. Scott, in turn, decides to humiliate Cartman one final time. He has his older friends collect pubic hair from every kid in South Park Elementary School. He laces a pot of chili with all of it. His plan is to feed that chili to Cartman in front of the entire town and tell him on stage exactly what he just ate. You can probably see where this is going. But the way it gets there is the part that matters. At the cook-off, Scott arrives with his chili. Cartman is standing at his own pot, smiling, in his chef's hat. Stan and Kyle are in the crowd, expecting a disaster. Scott approaches Cartman and tells him that before they do the pony ride, he wants Cartman to try his chili. Cartman agrees, with a strange amount of enthusiasm. He picks up Scott's bowl. He eats almost all of it. The entire town watches, quietly waiting for the punchline. Scott, smiling, starts to explain to Cartman what he's just eaten. And then Cartman stops him, calmly, politely, and starts to explain a few things himself. He tells Scott that Scott was going to lace the chili with pubes, so he switched their bowls. Scott has just been eating Cartman's chili, which is a normal chili made by, as it turns out, Chef. Cartman compliments Chef on his cooking, says he didn't actually anticipate that detail, but it worked out nicely. He also tells Scott that he assumed Stan and Kyle would betray him and warn Scott about the pony plan. He saw that coming. He'd worked it into the plan. What Stan and Kyle didn't know, however, was that Mr. Denkins, the farmer who owned the pony, had a known policy of shooting trespassers on his land. Cartman tells Scott this in the same even tone. He tells Scott that he'd correctly predicted Scott would be too afraid to sabotage the pony himself, given the supposed plan to use it as a weapon. So Scott would have to send someone else, his parents probably. Cartman had gone to visit Mr. Denkins ahead of time and warned him there were violent pony killers in the area. He'd put Mr. Denkins on high alert. And so, when Scott's parents drove to the ranch the night before, hoping to quietly get the pony removed, Mr. Denkins had seen them on his land, panicked, and shot them both dead. The town goes quiet. People start to look at Mr. Denkins, who's standing nearby. Mr. Denkins, very nervous now, tries to defend himself by pointing out that they were trespassing, that he was protecting his property, that he didn't know who they were. And then Cartman keeps talking, because he's not finished. He tells Scott in the same calm voice that he turned up at the ranch right after the shooting, just in time to see Mr. Denkins giving his statement to the police, and that while everyone was distracted, he had taken the bodies. He had spent the night, he says, taking apart the bodies with a hacksaw. He had used the parts to make a chili, the chili Scott has just finished eating. He calls it Mr. and Mrs. Tenorman chili. He asks Scott if he liked it. Scott slowly reaches into the bowl. He pulls out his mother's finger, still wearing her wedding ring. Scott begins to sob. He vomits, he collapses to his knees, and Cartman jumps up onto the table and starts singing a small mocking song. The lyric, if you can call it that, is "Nya nya 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 nya, I made you eat your parents, nya 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 nya." He's smiling the entire time. He's not breaking character, he's not flinching. This is the moment he's been working towards for the whole episode, and he's enjoying every second of it. And then, because the universe of the show is essentially conspiring with him at this point, Radiohead arrive. Cartman had also written them a letter weeks earlier, claiming that Scott was a Radiohead superfan who was dying of a rare form of cancer and only had a few days left to live, and that meeting them would mean the world to him. They had agreed. They had come all the way to South Park, and they walk up to Scott, who is on his knees, crying, vomiting in pieces. Radiohead look at him for a moment, and then they tell him that he's a crybaby and that crying is not cool. They leave. Scott is alone in the dirt, having lost his parents, eaten his parents, and been rejected by his favorite band, all within about 10 minutes of each other. Stan and Kyle, who have been standing in the crowd this entire time, look at each other and say quietly that they're never going to make Cartman mad again. And the episode ends. Now, I want to sit with this for a second because this is the part of the video about the brilliance of Eric Cartman, and this is genuinely the episode that defines the word. The reason this episode lands isn't the shock. The shock would land in any show willing to go that far. The reason it lands is the construction. Every single thing that happens at the cook-off was planned in advance. Cartman didn't react to events, he predicted them. He predicted his enemy would lace the chili, so he swapped the bowls. He predicted his own friends would betray him, so he made their betrayal part of the trap. He predicted Scott would react to that betrayal by sending his parents to the ranch, so he made sure the ranch was a kill zone. He predicted that he could borrow the corpses without anyone noticing in the chaos. He predicted he'd be able to butcher them, cook them, and serve them in time. And he predicted that the chili cook-off would be the perfect public setting for all of this to be revealed at once, with Radiohead arriving on cue as the final touch. He told the town all of this on the same stage, in real time, with the calm confidence of a man giving a lecture. A 9-year-old did this. This is, on IMDb, one of the highest-rated episodes of South Park ever made. It's been near the top of those rankings for over 20 years. And I think the reason isn't really the shock value, it's the writing. The episode pulls off a layered, multi-trick reveal that most heist films don't manage, and it does it in 22 minutes, in a show that, at that point, was mostly known for fart jokes and celebrity parodies. After this episode, Cartman could not go back to being a regular cartoon bully. The writers couldn't unsee what he was capable of. Every cruel thing he does from this point forward in the show is built on the foundation laid here. The audience knows what he can do when he properly commits. The other characters know it too. Kyle, in particular, never quite forgets, and you can feel it in their fights for the rest of the show. And here's the part I always find a bit unsettling in a quiet way. Cartman never refers back to this episode. He doesn't brag about it later, he doesn't bring it up in arguments with Scott when Scott returns to the show years later, until Scott himself forces the issue. For Cartman, the whole thing seems to have been just an unusually satisfying afternoon. He's moved on, he's already thinking about the next thing, because as we're going to find out over the next stretch of the video, this kind of planning is not, for him, a one-off. It's the thing he does. It's his actual hobby. The Scott Tenorman episode is just the one we all happened to be watching when he revealed how good at it he is. We'll come back to that. For now, let's let it sit. A wooden crate shows up on Butterscotch's porch one morning. It's a bit dented, has Japanese writing stamped on the side, and looks like it's been shipped from very far away. Butters, being Butters, is delighted. He has no idea who would send him a robot from Japan, but he's never been one to ask too many questions about a gift. He pries the lid off, and there inside is what appears to be a fully functional, life-sized robot made out of cardboard painted silver with cone-shaped antennae sticking out of the top. It introduces itself in a stilted electronic voice as the Awesome O4000. And Butters, being Butters, immediately accepts that he is now the owner of a robot. The robot is, of course, Eric Cartman in a cardboard box. This is the Awesome O episode, Season 8, and it's worth talking about because it's the one that first made me realize something important about Cartman. He's not just a schemer, he's a performer. The two things are related, but they're not quite the same thing. A schemer makes plans, a performer commits to a role. And what makes Cartman dangerous, more than his intelligence or his cruelty, is that he is willing to live inside a character for as long as it takes the bit to pay off, no matter how miserable that character is. The plan for Osimo was small and stupid and selfish, like a lot of his plans. Cartman wanted dirt on Butters. He suspected Butters had embarrassing secrets, and he wanted to know them so he could use them later. The way to find out was to befriend Butters in a way Butters would never suspect. So he built a robot suit out of cardboard, climbed inside it, had himself delivered to Butters' house in a crate, and waited to see what would happen. It's the kind of plan a child would come up with. It's also the kind of plan only a child willing to spend an entire weekend trapped inside a cardboard box would actually carry out. And he carries it out for days. Days. He stays in the suit the whole time. He goes to dinner with Butters' family in the suit. He sleeps in the suit. He gets dragged on a trip to Los Angeles in the suit because Butters' parents decide their son's robot should come with them on holiday. He sits in cargo hold of a plane in the suit because robots don't fly economy. He eats toothpaste in a bathroom because Butters won't feed a robot. And the entire time, he refuses to break character. Even when Butters tells him casually that he has a videotape of Cartman dressed as Britney Spears and that he's planning to release it the next time Cartman pranks him, Cartman doesn't break. He can't. Breaking would end the scheme. So he stays a robot. He gets stolen by Hollywood producers who want him to pitch them movie ideas. He pitches them somewhere in the region of 1,000 films, most of them starring Adam Sandler. The producers buy every single one. He still doesn't break character because the producers haven't broken the scheme. He gets captured by the United States military who think he's an alien weapon. They strap him to a table. They threaten to dissect him. A scientist tries to save him and the military shoots the scientist instead. Cartman still does not break because doing so would expose him. The scientist dies for nothing. The cost of the bit just keeps going up, and he just keeps absorbing the cost. He only breaks at the very end, and not because he chooses to. He breaks because he farts inside the robot suit, and the soldiers hear it, and they figure out he's a person. By then, he's been in the box for so long, he's almost lost track of what was real. Butters, who has been watching the whole thing more attentively than Cartman realized, plays the Britney Spears video to the entire town as promised. Cartman is humiliated. The military general looks at him and says, with genuine pity, that he's a strange little kid. Cartman says, very quietly, lame. And the episode ends. There's something almost admirable about it if you can get past the fact that he had it coming. He committed to a doomed plan for days. He didn't break under pressure. He didn't break under tedium, which is harder. He almost got away with the whole thing. This is what I mean by performer. Cartman isn't just willing to deceive, he's willing to inhabit. There's a difference between lying to someone and becoming, for a weekend, a fully realized cardboard robot named the Awesome O4000, with a backstory you've made up on the spot about being shipped from a Japanese factory. The second one takes craft. There's another episode that demonstrates this even more clearly and somehow more weirdly. It's called Margarine. The plot is, roughly, that the girls at Cartman's school have invented a paper fortune-telling device, the kind you fold out of notebook paper, and Cartman has decided that this device is some kind of advanced technology that will give whoever holds it the power to predict the future. He doesn't know why he believes this, he just does, and the girls are using it at an upcoming slumber party. So Cartman naturally decides the only way to get a look at the device is to send a spy into the slumber party. The spy is going to be Butters, and Butters, in order to fit in, is going to have to become a girl. So Cartman dresses Butters up. Wig, dress, headband, the works. He gives him a new name, Margarine. He coaches him on what to say. He even forges a phone call to Heidi Turner's mother, doing his best impression of an adult woman, claiming to be Margarine's mother and saying his daughter would love to come to the party and please respect her authority because she works for a governor. Mrs. Turner, baffled by the call, agrees. Butters is sent in. The plan is, on paper, deeply stupid. The execution is the surreal part. To stop people looking for Butters at home, Cartman convinces Butters to fake his own death. He stages a suicide scene in the back garden involving a stuffed dummy and ketchup. Butters' parents, Stephen and Linda, find the dummy and believe their son is dead. They genuinely grieve. They mourn. Stephen, distraught, decides to dig up the body and bury it in the old Indian burial ground. Because he's seen Pet Cemetery and he thinks it might bring his son back. He does this. He buries the fake body. He waits for his son to return as a demon. When Butters does eventually come home from the slumber party, having had a genuinely lovely time, his parents lock him in the basement and feed him a saleswoman because they're now convinced he's evil. Now, if you stop and think about it, the cost of Cartman's plan is, again, absurd. People's lives have been derailed. A woman has been killed. Butters has been treated as a corpse and an undead demon by his own parents over the course of a single weekend. And Cartman didn't even get the paper fortune-telling device in the end. The plan failed. The cost was paid for nothing. But again, look at what he was willing to commit to. The phone call, the forged identity, the fake death, the coaching of Butters through hours of feminine performance, the willingness to maintain the entire scaffolding of the lie for as long as it took the slumber party to happen. There's an actor in there, somewhere underneath all of the awfulness, a small, terrible character actor who would rather build a 4-day deception than just ask the girls what their stupid paper triangle does. And then there's Eric Cartman, which I think is my favorite of all of them because it's the most economical. The episode is called The Entity, Season 5, and the rough setup is that Cartman is offered $300 to go to an inner-city Denver school and tutor the students. He has no actual teaching skills, he has no actual subject knowledge. The only reason he was hired is that he was, briefly and falsely, credited with raising test scores at his own school, when in reality Kenny had simply stolen the test answers from the teacher's desk. Cartman accepts the money. Then he panics because he's been told the inner-city kids will, in his classmates' words, fucking murder him. His solution is to disguise himself. Specifically, he shaves the middle of his head, leaves the front hair long, combs it over forward, and introduces himself to the class as Eric Cartman. He decides that he can pass as Hispanic if his hairstyle is right. He stands in front of a classroom of teenagers, none of whom are remotely fooled, and announces that he is going to teach them calculus. They tell him they don't want calculus. He tells them that the reason they don't want calculus is that white people haven't taught them how to cheat properly, and that cheating is the actual key to getting ahead, and that this is why people like Bill Belichick succeed. He then teaches them for the entire episode how to lie, how to forge, how to manipulate, and how to pass off plagiarized work as their own. By the end of the episode, his students are doing better than the white kids at the rich high schools across town. The cheating works. Cartman has, in his own way, succeeded as an educator. This is, again, the brilliance the title of the video is pointing at. It's not noble, it's not clean, but it's a fully realized performance. Cartman didn't just lie about being qualified. He invented a new persona, a new ethnicity, a new pedagogical philosophy, and committed to it for a full school term. He showed up every day, he stayed in character, he taught his students, and in fairness to him, his students learned something. They just learned to cheat rather than to do calculus. The pattern across all of these is the same. Cartman finds a problem. The problem could be solved with a normal conversation, or a small bit of effort, or just accepting a minor disappointment. He instead chooses a solution that requires him to become a new person for an extended period of time. Robot, girl's mother, Hispanic calculus teacher, the coon, which we'll get to later, and which he was willing to be for years, a real estate agent in a later episode, a vegan boyfriend, a Confederate sympathizer, a reformed man briefly when the situation called for it. Whatever the persona required, he could become it, and he could hold it for as long as needed. There's an old phrase, I think originally about con artists, but it applies here, that a good lie has to be at least partly something the liar wants to be true. Cartman's roles always have that quality. When he plays a teacher, you can tell he genuinely wants to be one. When he plays a robot, you can tell he genuinely enjoys being a robot. When he plays a girl, briefly, in the same Margarine episode where he tests his own disguise, he is weirdly having a great time. He's not just deceiving, he's escaping. He's getting to be someone other than Eric Cartman for an afternoon. And maybe that's the saddest thing about him if you want to read it that way. He builds these elaborate lies partly because they let him take a holiday from himself. We'll come back to that gently near the end of the night. For now, let's move on to a much older mystery, one the show set up before most of the people watching it tonight were born. Some shows set up a mystery and resolve it within an episode. Some set it up and resolve it within a season. South Park, just the one time, set up a mystery and resolved it about 13 years later. And the mystery in question is the identity of Eric Cartman's biological father. This is one of those stories that's almost more interesting for the structure of how it was told than for the actual answer. So we're going to walk through it slowly because we've got the time and because the way the show handled this is genuinely a little bit unique in animation. The setup, if you go all the way back to the first season, is that Cartman doesn't know who his father is and his mother won't tell him. Leanne, the gentle, perpetually smiling mother we talked about earlier, has been vague on the subject every time Cartman has asked. The other kids in town tease him about it. Cartman, who is already insecure about every other physical feature he has, becomes obsessed with the question. He wants a father. He wants a name. He wants to know. The episode that kicks all of this off is called Cartman's Mom is a Dirty Slut, which is, in its way, an extremely 1998 title. It aired in February of that year. By the end of the episode, Cartman has tracked down most of the men who were at a particular party of Leanne's years earlier on what was very likely the night of his conception. There are a lot of them. Leon, as it turns out, had been quite popular at this party. The list of potential fathers includes Chef, Mr. Garrison, Officer Barbrady, Jimbo, Ned, Mr. Mackey. Several of the Cartman boys' father figures rolled into one suspect lineup. Cartman is upset by this. Leanne seems unbothered. To settle the question, Cartman is taken to Dr. Mephisto, the show's resident mad genetic scientist, who can supposedly determine paternity through some kind of DNA test that costs $3,000. The episode ends with all of the potential fathers gathered at Mephisto's ranch, Leanne standing among them, and Mephisto preparing to read out the name of Cartman's biological father from a piece of paper. The music swells, the shot is dramatic, Mephisto opens his mouth, and then an announcer's voice cuts in and tells the audience that the answer will be revealed in the next episode in 4 weeks' time. It's a textbook cliffhanger. The episode aired in February. The next episode would air in April. Cartman is left hanging. The audience is left hanging. Trey Parker and Matt Stone, for 4 weeks, have everyone exactly where they want them. And then they did something that, even by their standards, was a bit cheeky. The next episode, when it aired, was called Terrence and Phillip in Not Without My Anus. It was an entire half hour spent on Terrence and Phillip, the two Canadian fart joke cartoon characters from inside the South Park universe, on what amounted to their own spin-off. Cartman doesn't appear. The other boys barely appear. The paternity question is not addressed at all. The show opens with a narrator explaining that you have waited 4 long weeks to find out who Eric Cartman's father is, and then immediately announces that this episode will not be about that. It's about Canada. Enjoy. This is, in retrospect, one of the great trolling moments in television history. It's a network show on what was at the time a relatively new cable channel, openly mocking its own audience for caring about a cliffhanger. It also accidentally did the show a favor because it set a tone for South Park's relationship with its audience that has more or less held ever since. The show is going to do what it wants. The audience can come along or not. The actual paternity reveal, when it came in the following episode, was anticlimactic on purpose. It turned out, according to Dr. Mephisto's test, that Cartman's mother wasn't actually his mother. She was his father. Leanne, in the show's logic, was a hermaphrodite. And Cartman's actual biological mother was a different woman in town. The lore was, frankly, ridiculous. And it was clearly designed to close the mystery without giving anyone the satisfaction of a clean answer. Trey Parker and Matt Stone seem to be making a point about how stupid cliffhanger reveals always are. Leanne is your dad. Move on. And for a long time, that was the answer. For more than a decade, Cartman went through dozens of plots. The entire show grew into a cultural phenomenon. The boys aged not at all, and the paternity question quietly faded into the background. Most viewers assumed it was a closed case with a stupid joke answer, and that was the end of it. Except it wasn't. Because in 2010, the show aired its 200th episode called very directly 200, and then its 201st episode called 201. And those 2 episodes did something interesting. They went back decade deep and started picking up loose threads from the show's own history. One of those threads was the paternity question. The episode revealed that the genetic engineering ranch scene from season 1 had been tampered with. The DNA test results had been altered to give the silly hermaphrodite answer. The real answer had been hidden. And the real answer turned out to be, almost laughably on brand for the show, that Cartman's father had been a member of the Denver Broncos. Specifically, a player who had been at Leon's party on the relevant night, specifically the player named Jack Tenorman. Jack Tenorman, as in Scott Tenorman's father, as in the man who was shot and killed at Mr. Denkin's ranch in the episode we walked through a little while ago. As in the man who was, by his own son, dismembered, cooked into a chili, and fed to Scott in front of the whole town. This is the bit that makes the reveal land. It's not the surprise that he's half Bronco, it's what it does to the earlier episode. Retroactively, the chili cook-off becomes something much more layered. Cartman didn't just kill a man he hated, he killed his own father. He didn't know it at the time. The show didn't know it at the time, presumably. But it doesn't really matter whether the writers planned it that way from the beginning or whether they noticed the opportunity decades later. The point is that the show, with the casual confidence of a program that doesn't expect to be analyzed too closely, dropped a tragedy in the middle of one of its comedy episodes, retroactively. Cartman is, by the show's own canon, a person who has eaten his own father, or rather fed his own father to his half-brother, and watched him eat. The geometry of the family tree is a small horror in itself. And Cartman's reaction to the news when he finds out is exactly what you'd expect from him and somehow still funny in a slightly bleak way. He doesn't cry about killing his father. He doesn't cry about feeding his own father to his half-brother. What he cries about is the fact that this revelation means he's half ginger because Jack Tenorman, like his son Scott, had red hair. Cartman, who has spent multiple episodes of the show actively crusading against ginger people, is now revealed to be one. Sort of. Half. And that's the part he can't accept. The whole blood patricide barely registers. The hair color is the deal breaker. He weeps openly. The other characters look at him and don't really know what to say. The closing detail, just to round it out, is that Mitch Connor, a small voice Cartman makes appear on his own hand by drawing a face on it, comforts Cartman by reminding him that he's also half Denver Bronco. And that fact, the fact that he's descended from professional athletes, immediately cheers him up. He stops crying, he smiles, he's a Bronco, he can live with that. Now, the structural punchline to all of this is that the episodes 200 and 201 are, at the time of this recording, among a small group of South Park episodes that have been quietly removed from most streaming platforms. The reason isn't the paternity reveal, or the chili tie-in, or any of the Cartman material. The reason is that those episodes also depicted, or attempted to depict, the Prophet Muhammad, and the resulting threats and controversy led the show's creators to handle those specific episodes with a lot of care. As a result, the canonical answer to the longest-running mystery in the show's history is, on most legal streaming services, currently locked away. You can find it if you go looking. The official South Park site has some episodes available. The DVDs are out there. But if you sat down on a quiet evening with Paramount Plus and tried to watch the resolution of a Season 1 cliffhanger by going through the show in order, you would hit a gap somewhere in Season 14, and you'd have to take my word for what happens in it. I find that detail slightly poetic, if I'm being honest. The mystery the show opened in its first year and then trolled its own audience about for a month, and then quietly resolved a decade later with a piece of news that completely recontextualized an earlier classic episode, has now become slightly inaccessible, which feels somehow on brand. The show set up the question, took its time answering it, gave the answer, and then made the answer hard to find again. The whole arc, start to finish, has the same prankster energy as that empty Terrence and Phillip episode from 1998. And throughout all of it, sitting at the center is a small, angry boy with brown hair and a turquoise jacket, who has spent decades not knowing who his father was, and who, when he finally found out, didn't really care about the answer for the right reasons. There's something quietly tragic about that, if you let yourself sit with it for a second. Cartman wanted a father for years. He got one, he'd already killed him. And the only part of the news that broke him was the hair. Anyway, that's the father situation. Let's move on to the time he tried to be a superhero, because that's a much lighter run of episodes, and we've earned a bit of lighter. A trash can lid tied around the face like a mask. A long brown costume. Mittens that look more like paws than mittens. A scarf hanging down like a tail. And inside all of it, a small, angry fourth grader who has, very suddenly and without consulting anyone, decided that he is now a superhero, that his superhero name is the Coon, and that the rest of the town is going to recognize this fact whether they want to or not. This is the Coon. He shows up around season 13, I think, and then comes back in a much bigger way during a 3-episode arc in season 14, and he is, in his small, ridiculous way, one of my favorite Cartman bits in the whole show. The Coon is basically Batman if Batman was a chubby 9-year-old who'd seen The Dark Knight in cinemas once and decided he could just do that. There's the cape, there's the mask, there's the dramatic appearing in alleyways, there's the gravelly low voice when he speaks to criminals, there's the obsessive secret identity. The only thing missing is the actual capability of fighting crime, which Cartman is, predictably, very bad at. The Coon's origin is, in true Cartman style, that he watched too much television and decided to try a thing. He starts patrolling South Park at night looking for crimes. He's hoping for muggings, kidnappings, drug deals, the standard Batman menu. What he actually finds is mostly small-scale littering and the occasional bit of teenage graffiti, which he tackles with the same dramatic flair he'd use for a serial killer. He calls the news, he calls the police, he waits for the front page coverage, he waits a bit more, he keeps waiting. The front page does not come. The town of South Park, it turns out, is not particularly impressed by a small boy in a homemade mask shouting at vandals. Then another costume figure starts showing up. This one wears a purple cape and a hood and a mask that only covers his eyes. He calls himself Mysterion. He speaks in his own gravelly voice. He saves people from genuine crimes. He stops a mugging. He helps an old lady. He becomes, within about a week, the toast of the town. The cops love him. Kids put posters of him in their school lockers. He's the real thing. And the Coon, who has been patrolling for weeks at this point with nothing to show for it but a few scolded teenagers, becomes incandescent with envy. A lot of the comedy of this arc is just watching Cartman try to handle this. He cannot accept it. He cannot accept that another costume kid is more popular than him. He spends an entire episode trying to figure out who Mysterion is, because if he can unmask Mysterion, he can humiliate Mysterion, and then the field will be clear for the Coon to be the town's primary superhero. He accuses everyone. He suspects Stan. He suspects Kyle. He almost has a breakdown when Wendy points out that Mysterion could, in theory, be a girl. He recruits Professor Chaos, who is Butter's supervillain alter ego, just so he has someone to plot with. He tries to blow up a hospital. He's a bad superhero who is, by the middle of the arc, willing to commit terrorism to get a press conference. The plan goes about as well as you'd expect. Mysterion ends up on top. The town adores Mysterion. The Coon retreats into his basement to sulk. And then, in the second half of the arc, a bigger story shows up around all of them, and Cartman gets the chance to do what he does best, which is to attach himself to a much larger event and make it about him. The bigger story, briefly, is that an oil company has drilled a hole on the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, then a hole on the surface of the moon, and one of those holes has accidentally opened a portal to another dimension. The other dimension contains, among other things, Cthulhu. Cthulhu, the giant, tentacled cosmic horror from H.P. Lovecraft, with the wings and the squid face and the apocalyptic vibe. Cthulhu emerges. Cthulhu starts destroying the Gulf Coast. The world is in the early stages of a Lovecraftian apocalypse. The boys, in their various superhero costumes, form a team called Coon and Friends to try and stop it. Mysterion is the natural leader. He's the one with the actual moral compass. The Coon, despite founding the group and naming it after himself, is voted into a supporting role almost immediately. The other team members are Toolshed, who is Stan with a hard hat, the human Kite, who is Kyle with goggles and a cape that may or may not let him fly, Mosquito, who is Clyde with a vuvuzela strapped to his face, Tupperware, who is Tolkien wearing kitchen storage containers with a small in-show explanation about having been in a car accident, Iron Maiden, who is Timmy in a metal suit, and Mintberry Crunch, who is a kid named Bradley who insists, against all available evidence, that his superpower is the power of mint and berries together. Mintberry Crunch is, as it turns out, the actual chosen one. We'll come back to that. What Cartman does, in classic Cartman fashion, is decide he doesn't really care about the global crisis. He cares about being in charge again. He cares about being respected. He spends the early part of the trilogy trying to manipulate the group into doing what he wants, which is mostly to use their resources to attack Captain Hindsight, a separate superhero whose powers only work after a disaster has happened, and whose existence Cartman finds personally insulting for reasons he can't quite articulate. The other members object. Mosquito, in particular, suggests they help the actual victims of the oil spill rather than blackmail other superheroes. Cartman, when challenged, responds by beating up Mosquito and Mintberry Crunch in a sequence that is openly modeled on a fight scene from A Clockwork Orange. He gets voted out of his own team, he gets grounded by his mother, he sneaks out anyway because grounding has never really worked on him, and then he does something almost impressive. He doesn't sulk, he doesn't go home, he flies to New Orleans on his own, where Cthulhu is currently destroying everything in his path. And he, a 9-year-old boy in a homemade Batman costume, walks up to a cosmic horror approximately the size of a city block, and he charms it. He decides that being mean to Cthulhu isn't going to work, so instead he gets cute. He calls himself the Little Coon. He rubs Cthulhu's belly. He talks to him in baby talk. He's parodying the scene from My Neighbor Totoro, where a small girl makes friends with a giant forest spirit by being adorable. And it works. Cthulhu, a being from beyond time and space whose mere appearance is supposed to drive humans insane, decides that he likes the Little Coon. The two of them become friends, and then Cartman uses his new friend, who can casually flatten entire neighborhoods, to do what Cartman has always wanted to do. He flies around with Cthulhu and points at things he doesn't like, and Cthulhu destroys them. They demolish a synagogue, they destroy a hippie convention, they flatten San Francisco, they knock over a Justin Bieber concert and kill several hundred fans in the process. Cartman, riding on the back of an interdimensional god, is finally getting to do what he's wanted to do for years, which is to make the world a smaller place by removing the bits of it that personally annoy him. It is, in its way, a very pure expression of who he is. Power plus no constraints, plus a personal grudge list, plus a friend big enough to actually carry out the agenda. The Coon, at last, is in charge of something. And the something is a horror from the abyss. The way Coon and friends defeat him is also worth mentioning, because it's the bit of this arc that really lasted in the show's mythology. Mysterion, who all this time has been increasingly tense and weary, finally tells the others a secret about himself. He tells them that he cannot die, that every time he dies, he wakes up the next morning in his bed, and nobody remembers what happened to him. They don't believe him. So to prove it, he takes out a gun, and he shoots himself in the head in front of his friends. They're horrified, they scream. And the next day, when they see him at school, none of them remember any of it. He's still alive, he's still wearing the parka. And he is the only one who carries the memory of having died in front of his closest people the night before. That moment, more than the Coon, is what makes the trilogy feel important in retrospect. The show had been telling a Kenny dies joke for almost 15 years at that point. The trilogy is where it became, very quietly, not a joke. Kenny's curse is explained in detail. His parents are revealed to have once attended a Cult of Cthulhu meeting in their younger years, mostly because someone offered them free beer. And the curse they accidentally invited onto their family has played out ever since. Kenny dies in every episode. His friends forget. He doesn't. He's been alone with the truth for as long as he's been alive. Cthulhu, in the show's logic, is the actual source of the curse. Defeating Cthulhu is the closest Kenny will ever get to a resolution. And he doesn't get it. Mintberry Crunch, of all people, the kid with the imaginary mint and berry powers, turns out to be an actual alien chosen one, and he's the one who pulls Cthulhu back into the abyss. The world is saved. Kenny is not. I bring all of this up not to wander too far from Cartman, but because it's a useful contrast. Mysterion, in this trilogy, is doing what a real superhero does. He's bearing a private weight nobody else can see, and he's trying to save the world anyway. The Coon, in the same trilogy, is using his costume to attack hospitals, blackmail rivals, beat up his own teammates, and ride a god around for personal vendettas. The two of them are wearing the same kind of mask. They're doing entirely different jobs. The trilogy ends with the Coon thrown in a small holding cell with Professor Chaos. Mintberry Crunch flies away to find his real parents. Mysterion goes home, takes off his hood, sits on his bed, and shoots himself again because he's tired and wants to start over. None of his friends will remember. And Cartman, sitting in his cell, almost certainly hasn't learned anything. The arc ends, the show moves on, and the next episode he's right back to scheming. He'll keep dressing up as the coon for years afterwards, every so often, whenever the show wants a callback. He never grows out of it. He never quite admits he wasn't the hero of the story. If you watch enough of him, you start to realize something about how he uses costumes. The robot suit, the schoolteacher disguise, the girl costume he made Butters wear, the superhero outfit, the various small businesses he sets up where he wears whatever uniform the business requires. Cartman puts on the costume not to fool other people, although that's part of it. He puts on the costume because the costume is the only version of him where, for a little while, he doesn't have to be Eric Cartman. He gets to be Authorita, he gets to be Cartminez, he gets to be Awesome-O, he gets to be the coon. And inside the costume, for as long as the bit lasts, he's a slightly different person. That feels like enough coon for one go. Let's keep going. A speech, a small 4th grade classroom. A boy at the front holding a stack of cue cards, delivering an oral report on the social menace that is, in his view, gingers. Children with red hair, pale skin, and freckles, whom he refers to throughout the presentation as a separate and inferior people. He uses the phrase, "Gingers have no souls." He says it with the cheerful confidence of someone reading a weather forecast. The class watches in silent discomfort. The teacher doesn't intervene because South Park teachers very rarely intervene. The boy finishes his speech, sits down, and looks pleased with himself. The boy is, of course, Cartman. Stan, Kyle, and Kenny then pull off one of my favorite small bits of payback in the entire show. Having been told to their faces that gingers are subhuman, they decide to teach Cartman a lesson. They wait until he's asleep, they sneak into his room, they bleach his skin, paint freckles on his face, and dye his hair red. Cartman wakes up the next morning, looks in the mirror, and sees a ginger looking back at him. He runs to his mother. Leon is predictably horrified. They go to the doctor. The doctor, who has clearly seen a few of these in his time, suggests calmly that they consider putting Cartman down rather than living with him as a ginger. Leon briefly considers this. She decides against it, mostly because Cartman is, as the doctor mentions, standing right there next to her. Now, at this point in any normal episode of any normal television show, the lesson would land. The bully has become the thing he hates. He'll have a moment of reflection. He'll apologize to the gingers at school. He'll learn that prejudice is wrong because he has very briefly experienced what it's like to be on the other side of it. Roll credits. That is not what happens, because Cartman is not capable of that arc. What Cartman does instead, after a brief period of suffering the discrimination he himself created, is to assemble all the actual ginger students at his school and tell them that the time has come for them to organize. He becomes their leader. He tells them that they are, in fact, the chosen race. He cites Ron Howard as a model of ginger excellence. He calls the new group the Ginger Separatist Movement. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't reverse his position. He doesn't even soften his rhetoric. He just smoothly switches sides while keeping the bigotry intact, simply pointing it in the opposite direction. Where yesterday he was the leader of the anti-ginger movement, today he is the leader of the pro-ginger movement, and either way, he's the one with the microphone. The new movement starts small. They beat up a non-ginger child actress who's playing the role of Annie Warbucks in a school production. They issue manifestos. They have rallies. But the movement, like all of Cartman's movements, has a habit of escalating quickly. Within a few episodes worth of plot, the Ginger Separatist movement has grown to encompass adult gingers as well, and it's calling for the eradication of all non-gingers from the planet. It has, in the way of so many of Cartman's projects, become a small genocide. The climax of all of this takes place in the Sunset Room at the Airport Hilton of all places, where the gingers have gathered to ritually sacrifice all the non-ginger children they've kidnapped, including Stan, Kyle, and Kenny. There's a lava pit, there's chanting. Cartman is at the front of the room in a small Hitler-adjacent pose, ready to feed Kyle into the lava first because Kyle is what the movement calls a daywalker, a ginger who can pass as non-ginger. And right before Kyle goes into the pit, he leans over and tells Cartman very quietly that the red hair and the freckles and the pale skin are not real. He explains that he and the other boys dyed Cartman in his sleep. Cartman is not actually a ginger. He never was. Cartman processes this for about half a second. You can see the gears moving. He's about to be a hypocrite in front of an army of armed bigots he himself radicalized. He understands instantly that the moment they find out, they will throw him into the lava as well, because they will rightly conclude that he was a non-ginger leader of a ginger movement. which is the worst possible thing one can be from their perspective. So he does what he always does. He pivots mid-sentence with no preparation. He stands up and announces to the gingers that he has, in this exact moment, had a profound moral revelation. He realizes now that the only thing worse than being persecuted is to become the persecutor. He realizes that hatred only breeds more hatred. He realizes that what we all need to do is hold hands together as one people. And then, because the situation absolutely requires it, he leads the entire Hilton Ballroom in a sing-along of a song called Hands in Hand, which is meant to symbolize unity across all the races. The gingers, baffled and a little teary, join in. The children they were about to murder also join in. By the end of the song, everyone is hugging. The genocide is canceled. Cartman has, in the space of about 90 seconds, gone from genocidal cult leader to peace activist, and saved his own life by reversing his entire worldview on a dime. And Kyle, in the middle of all of this, leans over to him and quietly tells him that he is, and I'm going to lightly paraphrase here, an absolutely manipulative little nightmare. Cartman concedes the point. He doesn't deny it, he just shrugs because the song worked, and now he's not going to be thrown into lava. From his perspective, it's a win. I love this episode. I think about it more than I should, because what it demonstrates, in a very compressed and very clear way, is something that runs through the entire character. Cartman has no actual convictions, none, not one. He has positions, and he holds those positions loudly, and he will go to enormous lengths to advance them, right up until the second the position becomes inconvenient to him personally. The moment the cost shifts onto him, he will switch sides without any ceremony at all. He's not a true believer, he's a politician, a very small, very angry, very local politician who happens to be 9 years old and operating in a 4th grade classroom. This pattern is everywhere if you look for it. Take the Hall Monitor episode, Season 3, which is one of the earliest examples. The school appoints a couple of children as hall monitors, with sashes and clipboards and the power to issue minor demerits. Cartman is one of them. Within about a day, Cartman has transformed his hall monitor role into a full authoritarian regime. He's patrolling the corridors, he's stopping students, he's demanding paperwork, he's giving speeches about the importance of respect, using exactly the catchphrase he's most famous for. Other children are afraid of him. The thing he wants, in the way I described earlier, is not really to monitor the halls. It's to wear the sash and to make people listen. The hall is incidental. The authority is the point. Take Cartman Land, which we'll talk about properly in a bit, but which is the episode where Cartman inherits $1 million and uses it to buy his own amusement park, specifically so he doesn't have to share the rides with anyone. He doesn't want to run an amusement park. He doesn't want to make money. He doesn't even particularly want all the rides for himself in the way a normal greedy person might. What he wants is for everyone else to be told no. The pleasure of the project is watching other families turn up at the gates and be turned away. Refusing entry is the point of the business. Everything else is overhead. Take the Death Camp of Tolerance, Season 6, where Cartman, having been wrongly placed in a tolerance camp by adults who think he's being persecuted, realizes that he can stay there indefinitely if he keeps complaining loudly enough, because the more he plays the victim, the more the adults defer to him. He gets out of the camp by faking the victim arc. He understood the system, he used it, he didn't suffer through it, he surfed it. Or just to throw in one more, take the episode where Cartman convinces Butters to participate in a very upsetting scheme to enter a Special Olympics event by pretending to be disabled so that he can win the prize money. Cartman trains in some genuinely brutal montages to compete at a child's level on the basis that an able-bodied kid faking it should easily beat the actual competitors. He loses badly. The episode mocks his vanity. But the structural point, again, is the same. He sees an opportunity to claim an advantage that isn't his, and he takes it without any pause. The morality of the situation does not occur to him as a relevant consideration. It only ever occurs to him as something other people might use against him later. The catchphrase from earlier, the one about authorita, comes out of this part of him. When he says it, in the various contexts where he says it, he's not really demanding respect from any specific person. He's demanding respect as a principle. He wants the rest of the world to operate on the assumption that he's in charge. He wants the deference, the compliance, the small bow of the head when he walks past. He doesn't always know what to do with it once he gets it. He just wants it offered by default, so he can decide later whether to be merciful or not. This is, depending on how you look at it, either deeply cynical writing or deeply accurate writing. Trey Parker and Matt Stone have always been a bit suspicious of any movement that requires you to take a side without thinking. The Ginger Separatist arc is very obviously a satire of identity-based supremacy in general. Cartman wears the politics of whichever group will hand him a microphone. The microphone is the goal, the politics are the costume. And the costume can change at any time, including in the middle of a sentence, with no apology and no acknowledgement, because the boy underneath the costume only really believes in the boy underneath the costume. You can find this exhausting, a lot of people do. But you can also see, if you squint, why he works as a character. He is a kind of pure case study. Most people who behave like Cartman in any real-life context are at least pretending to have principles. He doesn't bother. He has the honesty of a person who has never seen the point of consistency. And there's something almost clarifying about it, watching a character that direct. Anyway, let's leave the demagogue version of Cartman here and look at a slightly stranger part of his life, which is the year he had an actual girlfriend, a school assembly. Donald Trump has just been elected in the show's universe and in ours, and the kids of South Park are processing it in various ways. PC principal, who runs the school, asks the children to talk about the things they want to do and the people they want to be. A girl named Heidi Turner stands up at the microphone and says, on stage, in front of the whole school, that there is one person on the planet who she would absolutely never want to be associated with romantically, and that person is Eric Cartman. She says it cleanly, no hedging. The room hears it, Cartman hears it. By the next episode, the two of them are dating. This is the start of what's quietly one of the strangest stretches of the entire show. Seasons 20 and 21, broadly speaking, follow Cartman and Heidi as an actual couple. Not a one-episode joke, not a quick gag relationship, an actual ongoing thing. They have arguments, they have date nights, they sit at lunch together. They meet each other's parents. Heidi's parents like Cartman, which is one of the smaller bits of black comedy in the run. Cartman charms them the way he charms anyone he has a use for. They take family photos, they smile. What makes this arc work, in the way some of the best South Park arcs work, is that it starts off looking like a parody of something else and then slowly turns into a character study. The parody in the beginning is the parody of a certain kind of online performance. Cartman, when he first starts pursuing Heidi, presents himself as a deeply sensitive, deeply progressive boyfriend. He talks about feelings, he calls out his own behavior, he posts, he apologizes in advance, he cries on demand. It's an extremely 2016 performance. And Heidi, who is genuinely a sweet kid, falls for it because the version of Cartman she's seeing is exactly the version of a boyfriend she's been told she should want. She has no reason to assume it's a costume. She's never spent any time with him before. The Cartman she's getting is a freshly built persona designed for her specifically. And he commits to it. Of course, he commits to it. We've already talked about how committing is the one thing he's actually good at. The early phase of the relationship is, in a strange way, almost charming. Heidi makes him better. She talks to him about her interests. She gets him to read books, which he, very pointedly, does not enjoy. She tells him about her values. She decides at one point that she wants to be vegan because she's been thinking about ethics and consequences and the kind of person she wants to be. Cartman, who would happily eat an entire fried chicken in front of her every night for the rest of his life, goes along with the vegan plan publicly. He sits at the lunch table with a vegan dish. He nods seriously when she talks about cruelty. He performs the role of supportive partner. The version of him who actually exists has not gone anywhere, but it's gone to sleep for a while, and the version Heidi sees is one she helped create. There's a scene from the stretch I always come back to. Heidi has been a vegan for a few episodes at this point. Cartman shows up at her door one evening holding a bag of food. He tells her he's brought her something special, something called Beyond KFC, a plant-based fast food product. Heidi is excited. She thanks him. She thinks her boyfriend has done a sweet thing. The two of them sit on her sofa and she starts eating. And the audience sees very clearly that what's in the bag is normal KFC. Real fried chicken. He's tricked her into eating an animal. She doesn't know. She enjoys her meal. He watches her eat it with a small, contented smile that's almost worse than him laughing about it. He's not even gloating to camera. He's just quietly pleased. That moment in a sleep video is probably as close to a horror beat as we're going to get tonight, and I think it's worth pausing for just a second on the reason. The vegan KFC bit isn't sadistic in the loud Scott Tenorman way. It's smaller. It's a boyfriend lying to his girlfriend about what's in her food in a way she'll never know. And the show, by playing it as a comedy beat, is doing something quite uncomfortable. It's saying, look at how easy this is. Look at how a small con can fit inside a normal relationship. Heidi is just sitting on her sofa enjoying dinner with her partner. She's a child, she's a sweet kid, and she's being lied to by the person closest to her in a way that targets the exact thing she's tried to be good about. That's the brilliance and the discomfort of the arc together. The show isn't making fun of veganism, it's making fun of him. The middle phase of the arc is where the writing actually surprised people. Heidi, after months of dating Cartman, slowly starts to change. She becomes meaner, she becomes more sarcastic, she picks up his speech patterns. She starts saying things like, Heidi silence when other people are talking, which is a phrase Cartman himself uses to interrupt people. She starts making fun of her friends, she gets sharper around the eyes, she stops being the gentle, principled girl from the assembly stage and starts becoming a slightly off-brand female version of the boy she's dating. The show is, very carefully and without ever drawing too much attention to it, depicting a kid being corroded by her relationship. Not by violence, not by any single dramatic event, but by daily exposure to a personality that doesn't quite let her have her own opinions anymore. By the time you notice she's changed, you can't actually point to the episode where it happened. Kyle, watching all of this from the outside, becomes obsessed with rescuing Heidi. He keeps trying to tell her that Cartman is bad for her. He keeps trying to get her to break up with him. She keeps not listening because, as she eventually says in one of the more genuinely good lines of the arc, she thinks she might be a bad person for following her heart. But she also doesn't know how to stop. She's a child in her first relationship. She has no perspective. And the person she's getting her perspective from is the person she's dating, who is, in turn, telling her every day that she's the only one who really understands him. There's a scene in this stretch where Cartman, frustrated with Heidi's growing demands that their relationship be 50-50, retreats to his bedroom and surrounds himself with Amazon Echoes and Google Home devices. He sits in the middle of them and uses every trick he can think of to make them all talk to each other at once. The room fills with electronic voices speaking back to him obediently. He's laughing, he's having the best time, and the message of the shot, which the show never spells out but absolutely doesn't have to, is that this is what he actually wants from a relationship. Not a person, a room full of smart speakers who will say whatever he commands. Heidi has become inconvenient because Heidi has needs. The Alexis don't. The breakup, when it finally happens, is staged in the school hallway, and the show plays it like a triumphant moment from a teen movie. Rock music, slow motion. Cartman walks down the corridor away from Heidi, telling her that he can't fix her, that he tried, that he's worth something. The boys cheer for him outside the school as he walks out. He looks like the hero of his own story. And then the scene shifts, and you remember what's actually happened, which is that a boy who systematically remade his girlfriend into a worse version of herself for a year has now walked out on the relationship he ruined, congratulating himself for being too good for her. Heidi, by the end, has lost weight, lost friends, lost her values, lost her sense of who she was. And the show, in its quiet way, lets the audience sit with all of it. She does eventually come back. The show, kindly, gives her some recovery in later episodes. She gets her old hair back, she gets her friends back. She's not the same kid exactly, but she's at least herself again. Cartman, of course, doesn't change at all. He moves on to the next thing. What I find most interesting about this arc in the context of tonight's video is that it's the one place in the show where Cartman's brilliance actually has a real cost to a real character we care about. The Scott Tenorman scheme had a cost too, of course, but Scott Tenorman is a fairly distant figure. Heidi was a known face, a friendly face, a character the audience had been seeing since the first season. Watching her get slowly hollowed out is different in tone than watching Cartman win a chili cook-off. The arc forces you to take seriously what it would actually feel like to date him. A lot of people, including people who've watched the show their whole lives, struggle with this stretch. Some find it the best run of episodes in the show. Some find it the most uncomfortable. I think both of those things can be true at once. It's hard to watch, it's also genuinely good writing. The character of Cartman as a piece of construction is at its most useful when it's letting you see very clearly what kind of damage a person like him would do if you let him into your life for long enough. When the relationship ends, the show goes back to its more episodic rhythm. Heidi appears less often. Cartman goes back to scheming and shouting and trying to dominate small situations he has no actual right to dominate. He never refers to the arc again, really. He doesn't seem to remember it the way other characters do. He just absorbs it into the long list of things he's done and moves on. The arc was a year of his life. To him it was, you suspect, just another costume that didn't fit in the end. We'll leave Heidi here. She's all right now. The show has moved on. Let's go and talk about some of the smaller schemes because there are a lot of them and most of them are mercifully funnier. There's a song, it plays for about 30 seconds in one episode and then never properly comes back, but if you've ever watched South Park more than a few times, you'll recognize it the moment you hear it. It's the Casa Bonita song, and Cartman sings it to himself whenever he gets within thinking distance of the restaurant in question. Casa Bonita, Casa Bonita. He sings it the way an opera singer sings about a lost love. He sings it in his bedroom alone. He sings it in his sleep. The Casa Bonita song is, in its way, the closest thing Eric Cartman has to a soul. Casa Bonita is a real restaurant, by the way. Or it was, and it sort of is again. It's a large pink stucco building in the Denver suburbs, dressed up to look like a Mexican fortress, with a 30-foot indoor cliff inside the main dining room, off which professional divers jump into a small pool every 15 minutes during dinner service. The food is, by most accounts, beside the point. The cliff divers are the draw. There's also a fake pirate cave, a haunted shop, mariachi music, and unlimited sopapillas. It's a strange and slightly magical place, and Cartman, in keeping with his general approach to wanting things, wants to go there more than he wants almost anything else in life. The episode called Casa Bonita is the one that demonstrates this best, and it's also one of the cleanest examples of Cartman's smaller schemes. The everyday brilliance, separate from the giant world-ending coon stuff. The setup is simple. It's Kyle's birthday. Kyle's mother is taking Kyle and 3 of his friends to Casa Bonita as a treat. Cartman, when he hears about this, lights up the way only Cartman can light up. Then Kyle disappoints him. Kyle is taking Stan, Kenny, and Butters. Not Cartman. Cartman is not invited. The reason Kyle gives is honest. Cartman has spent years making fun of Kyle for being Jewish. Cartman has, by Kyle's count, said something cruel about it most days for as long as they've known each other. Butters, on the other hand, has never said a mean thing to anyone. Butters is going to Casa Bonita. Cartman is staying home. Cartman doesn't argue. Cartman doesn't beg. Cartman, in his fashion, immediately starts running plans through his head. He tries the obvious one first. He attempts to be nice. He goes around the school complimenting people. He tries to perform basic kindness. The results are bleak. Within minutes, he's beating up Jimmy, the disabled boy, while pretending to be defending Kyle's mother's honor, which he is informed is not actually a nice thing to do. The first plan fails. The second plan is the one that lands. Cartman tricks Butters into believing that a meteor the size of Wyoming is about to hit Earth. He shows him fake news reports. He acts panicked. He talks about radioactive cannibals roaming the country once the meteor lands. He convinces Butters that the only safe place is an old bomb shelter on the edge of town, which Butters duly hides inside. Butters, in his perfect trusting way, accepts all of this without question and waits in the dark for the world to end. While Butters is hiding from a fictional meteor, Cartman is, as planned, the next obvious replacement on Kyle's birthday list. He shows up at Kyle's house with a present. Kyle is moved. Stan and Kyle even start to feel a bit bad for not inviting him in the first place. Cartman is set. Cartman has won. And then Butters' parents arrive at the door, frantic, saying their son is missing. The trip gets postponed. Kyle says it doesn't feel right to celebrate while Butters is gone. The police are looking everywhere, including in bomb shelters, which is bad news for Cartman because if they find Butters in the shelter Cartman put him in, the whole plan collapses. So Cartman acts. He goes to the shelter. He gets Butters out before the police do. He tells Butters that the meteor has hit and the world is now radioactive. He puts a cardboard box over Butters' head so he can't see that the world is, in fact, still there. He leads Butters blindly to an abandoned gas station, which Cartman has chosen because it looks suitably apocalyptic. He tells Butters a story about being bitten by a radioactive cannibal and being about to turn. He puts Butters into an old refrigerator at the abandoned gas station, tells him to stay safe, and walks off. And then, the bit that always lands for me, even after I've seen the episode a dozen times. About 30 seconds after Cartman leaves, a normal garbage truck shows up at the gas station, picks up the refrigerator on its routine collection round, and dumps it in the local trash dump. Butters, still wearing the cardboard box on his head, is now living at the dump. He thinks the dump is the remains of the world. He befriends a stray dog. He starts trying to build a new civilization. He spends, in the show's chronology, the better part of a week believing he's the last human on Earth. The drive to Casa Bonita happens. Cartman, in the car, almost ruins everything by accidentally saying he doesn't actually like Kyle. He covers by leading everyone in singing Happy Birthday. The plan is, for a brief and shining moment, working perfectly. And then Sheila, Kyle's mother, takes a phone call. Butters has been found. The town has been searching for him for over a week. Cartman is responsible. The car arrives at Casa Bonita. Sheila hauls Cartman out. Cartman, who has come within sight of the cliff divers, gets dragged away by his ear before he can take a single bite. He doesn't get inside. He doesn't get the sopapillas. The episode ends with him being escorted to a police car, screaming about the unfairness of the universe. That's a Cartman scheme. Beginning, middle, end, multi-step plan, traumatized innocent bystander, near success, last-second collapse. The episode runs about 20 minutes, and inside that 20 minutes, an entire small heist has been executed, with a moving payload, several locations, 2 near misses, and one of the boys living at a rubbish dump as a side effect. Most of his schemes follow that basic shape, not all of them. A few of them are bigger and a few of them are darker, but the structural rhythm is the same. He sees something he wants or something that's been taken from him. He builds an elaborate solution. The solution involves at least one other person being treated as a disposable element. The plan works for longer than it has any right to, and then it falls apart in a moment of small comic justice. Take the tonsil trouble episode, season 12, which sits at the darker end of the spectrum. Cartman has his tonsils out at the local hospital. The hospital, being what it is, manages to give him a blood transfusion infected with HIV. Cartman, understandably, is upset. He becomes the subject of a benefit concert. Almost nobody comes because the cultural conversation in the show's universe has moved on from HIV to cancer. Cartman is left at the benefit with only Butters and Jimmy in attendance. Kyle finds this hilarious. He laughs about it openly. He cannot stop himself laughing. And Cartman, in the way only Cartman would, sees Kyle laughing at his suffering and decides that the appropriate response is to break into Kyle's house at night with a syringe of his own HIV-infected blood and inject it directly into Kyle's mouth while he sleeps. He does this. Butters helps. Kyle wakes up the next morning with HIV. The rest of the episode is mostly Kyle being furious, and then the two of them flying out to Los Angeles to consult Magic Johnson, the basketball player, who has had HIV for decades and is somehow completely fine. They figure out that Magic Johnson sleeps on enormous piles of cash, and they hypothesize that the cash itself is the cure. They go to an AIDS research center and have large amounts of money injected directly into Kyle's bloodstream. It works. Kyle is cured. By extension, the entire disease is cured. The cure is money. The episode ends with a Jimmy Buffett concert celebrating the breakthrough. Kyle tries to tell everyone that Cartman gave him the disease in the first place, deliberately, and the town is too busy cheering for the cure to listen. That's another shape Cartman's schemes take. The cruelty is real. The damage is real. The plot somehow lands him as the hero anyway. He doesn't even have to engineer that part. The universe of the show frequently just hands it to him. There's also Cartman Land, season 5, where Cartman's grandmother dies and leaves him $1 million. He uses every penny of it to buy a small, failing amusement park outside town. The reason he buys the park, the only reason, is that he wants to ride the roller coasters by himself, with no other guests, with no queues, and most importantly, with the satisfaction of knowing that no other child in town is allowed in. He paints a giant billboard reading, "You can't come." He films a commercial telling the public that they are specifically not invited. the park predictably hemorrhages money. He's forced to allow a few customers in to cover operating costs. The few customers turn into a flood. The park becomes wildly successful. Cartman, miserable that he now has to share, sells the park back to the original owner. He walks away from the deal still with $1 million. The park, now packed with happy children, makes someone else a fortune. Cartman has technically ended up exactly where he wanted to be, except for the brief inconvenience of having had to look at other children using his rides. And then there's Up the Down Steroid, where he pretends to be intellectually disabled in order to enter the Special Olympics and win the prize money, and where the actual disabled athletes turn out to be substantially better at their sport than he is. There's the Christmas Critters episode, which I'll only briefly mention, where Cartman finds a group of singing woodland animals who turn out to be servants of the Antichrist, and where Cartman, instead of being scared, immediately starts trying to take them over for his own purposes. There's My Future Self and Me, where Cartman sets up a small business called the Parental Revenge Center, in which his entire service offering to any child who comes to him for help is to break into their parents' house and smear feces all over the walls. He charges for this. He has business cards. He has a small office. What you start to notice after you've watched enough of these is that the volume itself is the craft. Most television villains get 1 or 2 iconic schemes per series. Cartman has hundreds. They range from world historical in their ambition to almost touchingly petty. Some of them are sketched out over the course of a single episode. Some of them, like the Heidi arc or the Coon trilogy, take whole stretches of the show to play out. Some of them are forgotten the moment they happen. Some of them retroactively change the meaning of episodes that aired a decade earlier. The character has been generating new schemes week after week since the show began. The pace at which he comes up with new ways to make people unhappy is, frankly, impressive. Whether he is a brilliant character or just an extremely well-stocked one is, by a certain point, the same question. He wants what he wants. He goes after it. He brings other people into the plan, whether they signed up or not. He builds his scaffolding. He commits. Sometimes he gets the prize. Sometimes the prize gets taken from him at the last possible second. Either way, by the next episode, he has already moved on to whatever he wants next. Casa Bonita, by the way, did eventually open its doors to him within the show. He gets in there in a later episode. He sees the cliff divers. He gets his sopapillas. He gets the trip he'd been singing about for years. He's happy for about 12 minutes. Then he wants something else. We've spent most of this video inside the character, so before we wind down for the night, I want to step back just briefly and look at the work that goes into making him. Because the brilliance of Eric Cartman is ultimately the brilliance of a small group of people in a studio in Los Angeles who have been quietly assembling him for 1 week at a time, every week since the show first went on the air. The voice is, as I mentioned earlier, Trey Parker. Trey is also Stan. He's also Randy Marsh, who is Stan's dad. He's also Mr. Garrison, who is a teacher at the school and one of the show's most overused political mouthpieces. He's also Mr. Mackey, the school counselor with the strange, enormous head and the MK speech tic. He's also Timmy and Jimmy and Clyde and PC Principal and Satan, and a long enough list of other characters that, on any given episode, Trey is doing a substantial chunk of the cast by himself. Matt Stone handles the other half, including Kyle, Kenny, Butters, and most of the show's Jewish dads. Between the two of them, they voice almost everyone who lives in South Park. Other actors do occasionally get pulled in, mostly women voicing the women, but the bulk of the town is 2 men in a recording booth doing different voices into the same microphone over and over. The way Cartman specifically gets made is, in the way most things on the show get made, kind of unbelievable when you find out the schedule. Since the 4th season of the show, which started in the year 2000, South Park has been on what they internally call the 6-day production cycle. The idea, broadly, is that each episode is written, animated, voiced, scored, edited, and delivered in about a week. They start thinking about it on Thursday. They broadcast it on Wednesday. That includes, by the way, the bits people think of as labor-intensive, the animation, the sound design, the score, the voice acting, all of it, compressed into a week. Most animated shows take 8 or 9 months to make a single episode. South Park does it in 6 days. The reason originally was that the show wanted to be able to react to actual world events in something like real time. If something happened on a Monday, they could write a joke about it on a Tuesday and have it on television by the following Wednesday night. It's the secret behind a lot of the show's apparent prescience. They're not predicting the news. They're just airing 6 days later than the news, while every other show is airing 6 months later. What that means, practically, is that Cartman, the character, is being invented every week. The scheme of the week is written on a Friday or a Saturday. The voice lines are recorded on a Sunday or a Monday. The animation happens in the days after. Trey Parker is, every week, sitting in a studio doing the voice of a small Colorado boy and then immediately moving on to do the voice of that boy's terrible mother, or the boy's grandfather, or the random adult the boy is currently shouting at in the scene. There's no time to overthink the character. Cartman happens because Trey performs him. And then a small army of animators in Culver City, California makes that performance look like a cartoon, on a deadline that would terrify most animation studios. By Wednesday evening, it's on Comedy Central. The voice itself is, technically, Trey doing his own voice slightly pitched. He drops into a register that's a bit nasal, a bit higher than his normal range, a bit whinier, a bit more aggressively American. Then, in post-production, the audio gets pushed up further to give it that small child quality. The reason it works as well as it does, I think, is that you can hear that there's a real adult man underneath the voice. The kid doesn't sound like a kid. The kid sounds like a 45-year-old man who's pretending to be a kid badly. And that mismatch is what makes the character read as a tiny dictator in a child's body. If Trey did a clean child voice, Cartman would sound like a Saturday morning villain. The slight wrongness of the pitch is what makes him sound like the kind of person who could believably plan a chili cook-off massacre. He doesn't change much by design. This is something a lot of people miss. If you take Stan in Season 1 and put him next to Stan in Season 27, Stan has grown a tiny bit. He's a little more weary. He's seen more, he's had more relationships. The world has happened to him. Kyle has done the same. Kenny, in his quiet way, has accumulated the most lore of all of them, with his cult of Cthulhu immortality and his ongoing private hell. The three of them have, over time, drifted gently into being slightly different versions of themselves. Cartman has not, by design. Trey Parker has said in interviews that part of what he and Matt Stone find useful about the character is that he doesn't grow. He's the locked variable. He's the thing the rest of the show can bounce off. Whatever satire the show wants to do in any given week, whatever cultural moment they want to skewer, Cartman is already there waiting to be the person on the wrong side of it. He's been the same little 9-year-old for the entire show, while the world around him has changed completely. He was here for the Clinton years, he was here for 9/11, he was here for the rise of social media, for the financial crash, for the Trump era, for the pandemic, for ChatGPT, for everything. And in every one of those moments, he's the same loud round boy in a turquoise jacket, somehow scheming about something. He is, structurally, the most reliable character in television. You always know where he stands. He stands wherever benefits him most. The other thing that's worth saying, because it does affect the way you read him, is what Trey Parker himself has said about him in various places over the years. There's a particular interview clip that floats around the internet from time to time where Trey is asked whether he thinks Cartman is evil. His answer is more or less no. He says he thinks Cartman is a 9-year-old. He says 9-year-olds are kind of monstrous by default. They don't have a developed sense of consequence. They don't have proper empathy yet. They want what they want. They say what they think, they go after whatever they're interested in, and the only thing standing between them and chaos is the adults around them. Cartman, in Trey's reading, isn't a special evil. He's a regular 9-year-old whose mother forgot to install any of the brakes that other people's parents installed. The result looks like a monster from the outside, but the engine is a normal child engine, just running at full throttle with no governor. That framing is, I think, what makes the character work over the long haul. If Cartman were written as evil, he'd be exhausting. The show would become a cataloging exercise in how bad a kid could be. But by writing him as just a small, unfiltered person, the writers leave room for the audience to find him funny, or sad, or at times even sympathetic. We've all known children like him, at least in fragments. We've all probably been him for short moments when we were small. That recognition is what keeps the character useful as a piece of comedy. He's not a creature. He's a worst-case version of someone we know. The cultural footprint of all of this, just to round it out, is bigger than I think most people realize. South Park has, over its run, won 5 Emmys for Outstanding Animated Program. It has a Peabody Award, which is given to broadcasts for distinguished achievement, and which the show won specifically for its biting social satire. It has been nominated for an Academy Award for the song Blame Canada from the original feature film. It has been continuously on the air in some form since 1997, with breaks between seasons but no real pause. The deal between the show's creators and their parent company, signed in 2025, was reportedly one of the largest television deals of the decade, valued at over $1.5 billion over its full term. The show, in its older form, is on roughly 330 episodes. In its current form, it shows no signs of stopping anytime soon. And Cartman is, in many ways, the face of all of that. He's the one on the merchandise, he's the one on the t-shirts, he's the one whose catchphrase is, for better or worse, the most quoted line in the show. There are entire generations of people who have grown up with him without ever having sat down and watched a full episode. He's filtered into the broader culture as a kind of shorthand. Loud, fat, angry, conservative, racist, mean, occasionally hilarious. The shorthand isn't wrong, it's just incomplete. Because, as we've spent the last couple of hours talking about, the actual character is more carefully built than that. He's a schemer, a performer, a small-time politician, a serial costume wearer, a long-running mystery about paternity, a former boyfriend who broke someone we liked, and, when the writers feel like it, a friend of Cthulhu. He is, in his way, one of the most thought-through characters in animation. The thinking is hidden by the volume of the surface, but it's there. A team of writers working in week-long sprints, layering small details on top of each other over a span of years, until the small, terrible boy at the bus stop accidentally became one of the most internally consistent, fictional people on television. And the strange thing, the thing I keep coming back to, is that you don't have to like him to appreciate it. You don't have to root for him, you don't have to want him to win, and you very rarely will. You just have to look at him and notice the construction. Notice the patience. Notice that someone has been carving this small, terrible person out of fresh wood every Wednesday night for longer than most television shows manage to exist at all, and that the wood is, by now, very nicely shaped. That's the brilliance of Eric Cartman, not his. The people who make him. Let's go back to the bus stop for a second. The 4 boys are standing there in the snow. Stan in the blue and red, Kyle in the green, Kenny in the orange parka, with the hood pulled tight enough that you can only see his eyes, and Cartman in the turquoise and red, complaining about the cold, telling Kyle to shut up about something, ignoring whatever Stan is saying. The bus hasn't arrived yet. The bus in this show is almost never quite on time. The snow is still falling, lightly, the way it always falls. The mountains are still in the background, blue-gray and unchanging. The pole with the wonky little stop sign is leaning the way it always leans. The boys have been standing at this bus stop for nearly 30 years. They haven't aged a single day. The world around them has changed completely. Some of the cultural references that meant something in 1997 won't even parse for younger viewers now. The technology has changed. The politics have changed. The neighbors have come and gone. Chef is dead. Pip is dead. The show has quietly said goodbye to a lot of small recurring faces over the decades. But the 4 boys are still there. Same heights, same coats, same expressions of mild irritation, same morning bus that's running a few minutes behind. There's something almost comforting about that, if you sit with it. In a show built on irreverence, on satire, on the willingness to torch any sacred cow that wanders too close, the most reliable thing in the entire universe is that the 4 boys will be at the bus stop in the morning. The world ends sometimes in South Park. Cthulhu shows up, the Antichrist returns, aliens invade, a portal opens to another dimension, Cartman becomes a dictator. And then, the next week, the boys are back at the bus stop, complaining about the cold, waiting for the bus that hasn't quite arrived yet. And Cartman is still right in the middle of them, still scheming, still complaining, still working on whatever the next thing is. The other 3 put up with him because they have always put up with him. He puts up with them because he has nowhere else to be. None of them are ever quite going to walk away. The friendship at the bus stop is, in its way, the only stable thing in the entire world the show has built. Take a moment. Let the thoughts settle. There's no rush. I've been thinking, while making this video, about why we keep watching him. Not him specifically, but characters like him. Television has by now had decades of anti-heroes. difficult men, people we shouldn't root for, Walter Whites and Tony Sopranos and Don Drapers and all the rest. And there's a whole separate genre of cartoon villains in shows for adults. The Rick Sanchez's, the BoJack Horseman's, the Frank Reynoldses. We watch all of these people even when they're awful, and we keep watching even when they refuse to grow. I think with Cartman, the appeal is slightly different from any of the others. He isn't a man losing his soul. He never had one to lose. He isn't a depressed alcoholic working through his trauma. He's 9. He doesn't know what trauma is. He's not a brilliant man whose intelligence has destroyed him. He's a small boy whose schemes work just often enough to keep him going. There's no fall arc. There's no redemption arc. There's no character growth waiting in the wings to make it all worth it. He is what he is every week forever. And maybe what we're really watching when we watch him is the writers, the people behind him, the people who keep finding new corners for him to scheme in, the people who, week after week, decade after decade, sit in a room in Los Angeles and ask themselves, what would the worst 9-year-old in the world try this Wednesday? That's the actual continuous story of the show, not Cartman's, the people writing him. They've made one of the most consistent characters in television by being unflinchingly committed to the bit, the same way Cartman, on his own much smaller scale, is committed to his bits. So when we say tonight that we're looking at the brilliance of Eric Cartman, what we mean really is that we're looking at the brilliance of the people who've kept Eric Cartman going. The small terrible boy is a vessel. The vessel has held a lot of careful work. I'm starting to wind down properly. Get comfortable if you've moved at all in the last hour. Adjust the pillow, pull the blanket a bit higher if you need to. One thing before we go. South Park has a lot more to it than Cartman. Tonight was just one boy. There are episodes of the show that have nothing to do with him at all. Whole seasons where he sits in the background while Randy Marsh runs the plot, or Butters gets a sweet small adventure, or Stan and Kyle have a quiet falling out. The town is bigger than him. The show is bigger than him. He's the loudest of the 4 boys, but he's not the whole picture. If anything we've talked about tonight made you curious about the rest, the show is still on, and the back catalog is, by now, enormous. But that's all for another night. Tonight was Cartman. Tonight was the small, angry, round one at the bus stop, the one with the red hat and the turquoise jacket and the long list of crimes. We've walked through his schemes. We've looked at his costumes. We've sat with the strange, long mystery of his father. We've watched him become a superhero, a dictator, a robot, a girlfriend, a teacher, a businessman, a boyfriend. We've noticed gently how much craft has gone into making someone this bad sit this comfortably in the show for so long. And now we're going to leave him exactly where we found him. At the bus stop, in the snow, hands in his pockets, complaining, plotting something small, waiting for the bus that's running a little late. Good night, sleep well, the bus will get there eventually, the boys will get on. The day will go however it goes. Tomorrow there'll be a new scheme, there always is. And if you happen to dream about a small mountain town in Colorado tonight, with a bus stop in the snow and 4 boys waiting for a bus that's running a little late, well, you wouldn't be the first. Plenty of people have slept off entire episodes of this show without remembering a thing the next morning, and the town has, in its way, been there for them too. Cartman won't mind if you drift off in the middle of his story. He's been drifting through his own story for an awfully long time, and he hasn't noticed yet either. Rest easy. Thanks for sitting with this one for as long as you did. The town will still be there in the morning. The boys will still be at the bus stop. Cartman will still be complaining about something. Some things don't change. That's the comfort of him in a strange way. He doesn't grow, but he also doesn't go anywhere. Sweet dreams.